Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopinath Vallabha Girivaradari Chira Manachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Shaturashatushi Srimad Savangris Esi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Raj Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Nitai Gau Premanandi All glories to the Summon Devotees, all glories to the Summon Devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mamaite manasa yad yad asava hamiti bruvan Greenie Yacht tapuman radham karmayena punarbhavaha Mamaite manasa yad yad Asava hamiti bruvan Greenie Yacht tatpuman radham karmayena punarbhavaha. Amaite manasa yad asava hamiti bruvan Greenie Yacht tatpuman radham karmayena Mama mind. Ete all these. Manasa by the mind. Yat whatever. Asau that. Aham I am. Iti thus. Bruvan accepting. Greenie Yacht takes with him. Tat that platform. This is not very difficult to understand. In the world, we see that every nation is trying to supersede every other nation, and that every man is trying to advance beyond his fellow man. All these activities are going on under the name of advancement of civilization. There are many plans for making the body comfortable, and these plans are carried in the subtle body after the destruction of the gross body. It is not a fact that after the gross body is destroyed, the living entity is finished. Although many great philosophers and teachers in this world are under the impression that after the body is finished, everything is finished, this is not a fact. Narada Muni says in this verse that at death, one takes his plans with him, Greenie Yacht. And to execute these plans, he gets another body. This is called Punarbhava. When the gross body is finished, the plans of the living entity are taken by the mind, and by the grace of the Lord, the living entity gets a chance to give these plans shape in the next life. This is known as the law of karma. As long as the mind is absorbed in the laws of karma, a certain type of body must be accepted in the next life. Karma is the aggregate of fruitive activities conducted to make this body comfortable or uncomfortable. We have actually seen that when one man was about to die, he requested his physician to give him a chance to live 4 more years so that he can finish his plans. This means that while dying, he was thinking of his plans. After his body was destroyed, he doubtlessly carried his plans with him by means of the subtle body, composed of mind, intelligence, and ego. Thus, he will get another chance by the grace of the Supreme Lord, the Super Soul, who is always within the heart. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto mata shmitir jnanam apohanam cha. In the next birth, one acquires remembrance from the Super Soul and begins to execute the plans begun in the previous life. This is also explained in Bhagavad Gita in another verse. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati brahmanyan sarvabhutani jantra rudhani mayaya. Quote, the Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 61. Situated on the vehicle given by material nature and reminded by the Super Soul within the heart, the living entity struggles all over the universe to fulfill his plans, thinking, I am a Brahmana, I am a Kshatriya, I am an American, I am an Indian, and so on. All these designations are of the same essence. There is no point in becoming a Brahmana in preference to an American, or becoming an American in preference to a Negro. After all, these are all bodily conceptions under the modes of material nature. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanjakalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhyareva Cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita this famous verse is there. Mamaivam sho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashashananjani pakritistani karshati. That the living entity is part and parcel of Krishna, and this is true eternally. And that living entity, that eternal part and parcel of Krishna, he partakes of the qualities of the Lord in a minute way. Srila Prabhupada describes like this in the purport. So the Supreme Lord is completely independent. So the living entity partakes of that independence in a minute way. So he can choose this situation or that situation. So when the living entity chooses to stay in this, enter inside the material world, exist in this material world, then Krishna describes that he is struggling in this material world with the mind and senses. He says the 6 senses, which includes the mind. Manashashtana injani prakritistani karshati. So the word karshati means to struggle hard. The living entity is karshati, is struggling hard. So Srila Prabhupada describes what is that struggle, karshati? He describes the living entity is bound up as if by chains. And what is that binding chain? False ego. False ego is the binding chain. The modes of nature can manipulate one who has ahankar. One who does not have any ahankar, then the modes of nature is not able to manipulate such a living entity. So the actual chain that's binding the living entity into this material world is a false conception of himself. So we've been mentioning this point many times, that misconceptions or false conception is the most powerful force in the material world, because it will govern how one directs all his energy. So if one has left their keys in the temple room, but one thinks I left my keys in my bedroom, then that misconception means that all your energy will be in the bedroom. It won't even be looking in the temple room for the keys. The keys are left here, but because the conception is I left my keys in the bedroom, all my energy looking in the bedroom, and then you'll become more and more frustrated by that misconception. So this is called karshati. The living entity is karshati. He's struggling hard with misconceptions. So then Prabhupada describes further, and the main agent driving the living entity in the material world, after he's bound by false ego, is the mind. That is the main agent driving the living entity in the material world. So first he gets a misconception, and then the mind starts generating all these false ideas for happiness in this material world based on the misconception. Prabhupada says this here also. As long as one is absorbed in the bodily conception, his activities are performed on that platform. So first there's the conception, then there's the activities. The conception will govern the activities. The conception governs the plans that we have. Oftentimes when we think about we generally don't think about our activities, nor do we think about our goals, because Kali Yuga means thoughtless jivas, dull-headed. But if you think about the type of goals we have, what are our goals? I mean, in our heart of heart, we might say in a Bhagavatam class, my goal is Krishna Prema, because you have to give the right answer. But what is the heart of heart? What is our goals in life? So when you analyze that, you can see all the goals that we have are connected to some type of conception of ourselves. So if you're going to school, right, what is your goal? Because you think I'm a student. You have a conception, I'm a student. So what is your goal with that conception? To make money. Oh, good grades make money. Get a job or graduate with honors, or at least graduate. Whatever, some goal. And so you see your goal is connected to your conception. Okay, if you have a conception, I'm a bad student, then what is your goal? Somehow get a D, right? Somehow just pass the class. If you have a conception of yourself, I'm a very good student, then what is your goal? Graduate with honors. So according to your conception, you have your corresponding goal of life or whatever. And then you have the various activities you will carry out to meet that goal. So if your conception is incorrect, then everything you're doing is incorrect. Everything is doing is on a false platform. As is mentioned here, it's temporary. And ultimately, because it's temporary, it will be frustrating. So this is the binding force in the material world, is false ego. And the main thing driving the living entity after he's bound like that is the mind. And it's driving the living entity all over the universe. Brahmanda Brahmite Kona. Brahmanda Brahmite means to wander, wandering around. Wandering around from, I have to mention it in this way, he's wandering around from house to house. This is not a good neighborhood, this is a better neighborhood. He's wandering around from girlfriend to girlfriend, it's a very popular thing in the modern age, or boyfriend to boyfriend. And they're wandering around from religion to religion, and then within a religion, they're wandering around from guru to guru. And this guru is not a good one, this guru is more enlightened, more powerful. The wandering program is going on. And then ultimately wandering from body to body all over the material universe. And why is this wandering program going? Because of mental concoction. It is mental concoction. So he's thinking, my guru is not that powerful actually. I see he's not that enlightened. This guru is better. Then he goes to that guru. So this guru is also not so powerful. Let me go to this guru. He goes to that guru. This guru is also not so enlightened. I think only I am guru. No one else can be guru. He's thinking mental concoction. Dvaita Bhajra Braja Jnana Sabha Manodharma E Bhala E Manda E Sabha Brahma. This is mentioned by Mahaprabhu. The living entity is Manodharma, Manodharmi. His religion is mental concoction. And he's saying this is good, this is bad. And Mahaprabhu said this is all a mistake. Why? Because the foundation is wrong. What is the foundation? A misconception of the self. If that is wrong, Srila Prabhupada's simple example is, if one says 2 plus 2 equals 5, then anything you're doing after that is incorrect. So the foundation for which everything is being built, Prabhupada is making a critique here of modern civilization. The modern civilization is founded on a misconception. That means anything that's going on in this modern world is a misdirection of energy. All the energy is being misused because of one misconception, the bodily concept of life. At least it begins there. So then nothing can really be appreciated in the real sense because it's misdirected energy. Although we may find many things in the material world and our advancing civilization appreciable, but that is only very superficial because the foundation on which it is built is incorrect. So just like if someone, Srila Prabhupada's example, 2 plus 2 equals 5. Now, I'm very bad at math, but I remember we used to have to learn like these huge formulas. The only one I can remember the technical name is Pythagoras theorem, but that was like a small one, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But they used to have us remember like these more like very complicated ones in like trigonometry and so on. I had to make sure I sat next to the speculator that was much better than me. See how they were speculating? Because I didn't even know how to speculate. Math is very complicated for me. So it was so beyond me that I didn't even know how to speculate. So I had to they look like they're very good at speculating. So then you have these huge complicated formulas. Now if you, in the initial stages, make a mistake, then everything you do after that may look very sophisticated and very nice. And when you see it on paper, like, wow, it looks very beautiful. The division bars and the numbers carrying over and the plus, and it looks very nicely done and sophisticated. But because in the initial stage, a mistake was made. So all of it is actually useless, although it may appear to be very sophisticated and appreciable by superficial observation. So in the same way, everything produced in the modern civilization, I'm just mentioning that point because Prabhupada makes a critique of it, may appear to be appreciable on a superficial level. But because in the beginning there's a mistake, it's all actually totally useless. And the energy, because it is being misdirected, we can actually see the destructive effects of such misconceptions. Misconceptions are ultimately destructive for the individual and for the aggregate of living entities. So then it's being mentioned here. So then, according to those misconceptions, we got our corresponding useless goals, and we have our corresponding useless activities. And with those activities, we are procuring another material body. But the results of those material bodies are enjoyed inside the subtle body. That's what's being described here. Because the question was that how does a living entity perform activities in one body? That body is gone, and he's getting the results of the activities he performed in another body. How is that possible? So what's being described here is, yes, by being the chain of false ego, he's doing some activities, thinking, I am this, I am that, this is my duty, and therefore I shall do it. And he's procuring another material body by those activities. But he's enjoying the results of that body in his subtle body in another life. So the word being used here is Greenie Yacht. Greenie Yacht means, Prabhupada's explanation is, he's carrying his plans from one body to another. Carrying, and Krishna says the same thing. So after this verse, Manashashtan Indriyani, Prakriti Sanikashati, in the next verse in Gita, Krishna says the living entity is carrying his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air is carrying the aroma. And the same thing mentioned here, Greenie Yacht. He's carrying his different plans. Therefore, Krishna is so kind that he is awarding the living entity facility to try to give expression to all his mental concoctions. That's what's being mentioned here by Prabhupada. Krishna is so kind, Srila Prabhupada says, that if you shall mentally concoct that a galubjaman is so wonderful, that I will remain in this material world just to have a galubjaman, then Krishna is so kind that he will award you another material body just so you can enjoy that galubjaman. Prabhupada has said this thing, that if we are not completely free from material attachment, then if a living entity shall desire a rasgula, galubjaman rasgula, if he shall desire that, then Krishna is so kind that he will award you another material body so you can enjoy that rasgula. Of course, you have to take birth, death, disease, and old age with it, threefold miseries, and karma bandhana. You take all that with you, but you can at least have your galubjaman. This is the insanity of the living entity. Just like we hear this story from Mahabharata of a tiger chasing a man. He jumps inside a well, and in the bottom of the well there's venomous serpents. So he's grabbing like a branch, and he's stuck in between the well, and then he's holding onto some ropes, and some rats are coming, nibbling at the ropes. And then he sees a honeycomb is there, and some bees are coming out. They start swarming around him. A very miserable situation. And then one drop of honey comes out of that honeycomb, and he catches that drop of honey. He says, yeah, it's all worth it. So this is the insanity of the jiva. Of course, with such a fantastic story, we may miss the message. We may not think, yeah, that guy is so crazy. And we don't think that is talking about us. This is the allegory. We've been hearing this point repeatedly, that an allegory is used because people who think they're very intelligent, then they don't like to be told directly about their situation because they're very intelligent. So then people who are actually intelligent, they approach so-called intelligent people with stories. And then they tell stories, and that way the person, by hearing this story through and through, he starts to think, this sounds like quite familiar. Because he doesn't like to be told that if you shall tell him directly, he'll become envious. So a roundabout way is told. This is called Parag Shevata. Parag Shevata means like an esoteric way of presenting. Krishna speaks about this in Bhagavatam. Parag Shevata is a roundabout way of telling something. So intelligent persons, they don't like to be told directly. So a story is told, then hearing the story, he says, this sounds very familiar. Then in the middle of the story, he said, this actually sounds like he's talking about me. And then he'll hear more carefully, say, okay, no, but these names are not my names. So it is someone. That way he feels in a safe position. I'm not being the one discussed. So this story from Mahabharata, it is so fantastic that we may think it's not speaking about us. But that's actually what is going on. The living entity will agree to suffer in this material world, punarbhava, life after life, due to various mental concoctions. The most prominent of all mental concoctions can be found in the desire for sex enjoyment. That is that drop of honey. For that one drop of honey, then a living entity will agree to rot in this material world. Greenie Yacht. So then the problem facing the conditioned soul, like you were asking Maharaj the other day, is mental concoction. This is the main problem facing the conditioned soul. He is bound by false ego. He is bound by misconceptions. But it is the mind that is the driving force in this material world. Therefore, Krishna said, Mano Shastranjani. It is basically the mind which keeps the jiva trapped in the material world. We also can understand this that by way of mentioning that intellectually we can grasp the concepts of Krishna consciousness. We can grasp the futility of the material world. That is a useless thing. We even speak about it. But the mind, to convince the mind to accept is not so easy. Isn't it? Thinking, feeling, willing. We may easily comprehend that the material world is useless. That is easy by intelligence. But to get the mind to retract from its attempt to enjoy this material world is very difficult. It is very difficult. Mental concoction is very hard to overcome. It is the worst addiction in the material world. They should have a what do you call it? NA meaning for this. It's like none of you, I'm sure none of you have been. I've been, not because I personally had troubles with this, but I went to a friend's, what do they call it? Like a graduation or something. It's a 12-step program for persons who have problems with drug abuse. So when you go to the program, anyway, I'll just share this. So everyone sits around in a circle, and they all will tell their name, and they say, what are you in for? You know, like, what is your DOC, your drug of choice? So they'll say, my name is Tony, and my drug of choice was, cocaine. And now I'm trying to give it up. And everyone will start applauding. Oh, very nice, good, Tony. And then the next person will go, and say, oh, my name is Susie, and my drug of choice was marijuana. And, I got kind of out of hand, but now I'm trying to get it. And everyone will start clapping. But then we should also go, my drug of choice is mental speculation. And I haven't been able to give it up life after life. So I'm suffering in this material world like anything. This is actually most addictive drug, if you will, in the material is mental speculation. Most addictive thing. Mental speculation means I don't know, and I'm trying to know by the wrong process. This is called mental speculation. When I don't know, and I'm trying to gain knowledge by the wrong process, this is called mental speculation. So living entity is very addicted to mental speculation. Even in devotees, we can see you will ask someone some question, and then just instead of just saying I don't know, immediately the mind starts speculating. Draw from experiences of this world, start speculating. Well, I think no question of I think. You don't know. No question of I think. So this is the main problem of the conditioned soul. Prabhupada is also pointing out here, I'll mention this also, that it is a super soul within the heart who is giving remembrance to the jiva of all his various mental concoctions. And, giving inspiration within the heart how to fulfill them. Because Krishna is so kind. So then, if we want to get out of this material world, it is essential to give up mental speculation. So, see our dilemma. This is a big dilemma. Mental speculation is the manodharma, is the dharma of the conditioned soul. It is his drug of choice. Very addicted to speculating. At the same time, if he does not give it up, he cannot come out of the material world. This is our dilemma. It's a very hard thing to do. So Srila Prabhupada has mentioned yesterday in the purport, they can only be given up by bhakti. Manmana bhava mahabhakto ma yajimam namaskuru. One has to always think of Krishna, become his devotee, worship Krishna, offer obeisances to Krishna. Krishna Surya Sama, Maya Haya Andakar. If one can keep Krishna in his mind, then there's no question of the darkness of mental concoction capturing the living entity. So it is essential to keep Krishna always in our mind. Otherwise, there's no hope for us to give up mental concoction. So how does one keep Krishna always in his mind? This is a very difficult program, isn't it? Very challenging. Like I was mentioning in class yesterday, 2 hours chanting japa thinking of Maya. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Sometimes the living entity is so exhausted by speculation during japa. This is because mental speculation exhausts the living entity also. Just like you can see when two students, when they're talking about philosophy, this is the most dangerous thing. Most dangerous thing is two students talking about philosophy, especially in the modern day. They'll come to all the wrong conclusions. So you can see, because it's on the mental platform, no one can defeat the other person. There's no intelligence involved. It's all mental speculation. So no one can defeat the other person. So how does the conversation end? No one will accept defeat. It's whoever gets tired first. So they've speculated for 2-3 hours. So they say, okay, now I am tired. So then let's go and eat something like that. Even I had this experience on DePaul University once distributing book. For 2 hours I was debating with someone about Bhagavad Gita. And he was just speculating, you can't defeat them because whatever argument you'll get, they'll say, well, I think this. And then your whole argument is no intelligence involved. Well, I think this, I think that. So it was going on. 2 hours it went on. After even the rain started coming, we were just determined. And after 2 hours, I said, okay, I got tired. I'm getting out of here. There's no use to this. So then after that, he said, okay, I want to buy this book. After 2 hours, I was completely shocked. So I asked him, why do you want to buy this book? And well, first I took the money, just because on the mental platform, he might change his mind, right? So at first I took the donation, and then I asked him a question. I said, why did you decide to take this book? And he said, because you are so convinced about what you're saying, and I'm not at all convinced about what I'm saying. I was just speculating. He didn't use that language, but that's basically what he told. So then he took the book. So basically, it's whoever gets tired first. Then we can see our speculations exhaust us. Sometimes the living entity, in pursuit of his mental speculations in this material world, he sees that it's not working out, and he becomes exhausted. At that time, at that particular auspicious moment, if he shall contact the devotee or some spiritual wisdom, he can be revived at that moment, because he is so exhausted by the destruction of his futile mental concoctions. So he becomes exhausted sometimes. In fact, this is a verse mentioned in the 5th canto Bhagavatam, 14th chapter, that sometimes the living entity can appreciate the futility of the material world. The condition so is mentioned in the Bhagavatam, 14th chapter. I think it's verse 10. Sometimes he can appreciate the futility of the material world, but due to his strong bodily conception, his memory is destroyed. And again, he continues his activities. This is a very amazing verse. It says, due to his bodily conception, his memory gets destroyed. We can have experience of this also in hearing classes, right? We may hear a whole class about you're not the body, about don't speak prajalpa, don't do this, don't do that. Whole class we hear. But right after the class, due to the strong bodily conception of life, that bodily conception overtakes the memory, and again we pursue the activities. So sometimes the divinity does get exhausted, seeing the destruction of his mental concoctions. At that time, spiritual life may be possible for him if he shall contact the devotee. So one has to keep Krishna always in the mind. This is a very difficult thing. So in short, I'm going to just wrap up my point. How to keep Krishna in the mind is mentioned in Nectar Instruction. So you take shelter of Nectar Instruction, how to do these things. The main quality that will help keep Krishna in the mind is Kirtan. This is mentioned by our acharyas. Kirtan does not just mean Harinam Sankirtan, because like I said, doing chanting also mind is thinking of, woman, or mind is thinking of so many things, nonsensical things. But particularly, Prabhupada explains in the 1st canto Bhagavatam, explaining Krishna consciousness to others. This is called Kirtan. He said hearing is called Shravanam, and explaining is called Kirtanam. If you have to explain Krishna consciousness to others, it forces your mind to concentrate, isn't it? All the mind has to be completely engaged in order to explain Krishna consciousness to others. Otherwise, you're not able to speak. Immediately, if you get spaced out, everything is finished. So Kirtan, if you shall always absorb your life in Kirtan, explaining Krishna consciousness means to one another. That's why devotee Sangha means Kirtan. Sadhu Sangha doesn't mean going to the movies together. We used to do like that when I first joined. We would go to the movies together and call it the Sat Sangha program. Or, not maybe go to the movies, but we would watch a movie or something like that. That is not Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu Sangha means Kirtan is always going on. And Kirtan is, what is that verse from Gita? Bodhayanta parasparam katayantas chamam nityam tushanti chava. This is called Kirtan verse. This is a Kirtan verse. The devotees shall explain Krishna consciousness to one another, explain what they're reading, their realizations. Then the mind is forced to be controlled. Another thing that is very powerful for controlling the mind is accepting responsibility. Just like, for example, when we rise from Mangalarti, who wants to rise from Mangalarti? Especially if you have to go to sleep at 10 o'clock or something because pots were there and you were washing all throughout the night, and you go to sleep, then it feels like you only slept 2 hours and then it's time to go to Mangalarti. And then you don't want to go to Mangalarti, you feel tired and weak. But because if you shall have accepted responsibility that I should be there, especially if I have to sing the kirtan, I have to play the mridanga, I have to be there, then that acceptance of responsibility will force the mind. You can, drag the mind to Mangalarti. Mangalarti, mind will be preaching something else. It's a very good preacher. You went to sleep at 10:30, Prabhu. If you do this to yourself, your body will get destroyed. How you will attain Krishna. And it's a very profound preacher. And then I always like to mention, he really takes his principles seriously, 24-hour Kirtan. Because even when you're in the bathroom, he was preaching. When you're in the shower, he was preaching. When you're eating prasadam, the mind is preaching. Everywhere, the mind is preaching. Very profound preacher. But if you shall accept some responsibility in relationship to personalities, authorities, then because of that sense of accountability you have to authority, then you can drag the mind to service to Krishna. So this is another thing that is mentioned by our acharyas for controlling the mind. Also, we should pray to Krishna. Mam manabhava ma bhakto, mam yaji mam namaskuru. Mam namaskuru means you should offer prayer to Krishna. I myself don't get too much, I don't have like a very deep prayer program, aside from my just trying to chant Hare Krishna. But there's so many nice prayers of the Acharya. So this morning I was upstairs, I was not feeling well. I was hearing this Gopinath song for a short time before I came downstairs for japa. So I'll just read the thing I was hearing this morning. This is very nice in relation to this mind topic. If I knew I was giving class, maybe we could have sung this song also. It's very nice. Anyway, it says here, "Oh Gopinath, my mind is almost mad." My mind is mad. He's being almost mad. It does not follow any direction. Sounds familiar? And it is practically unconscious. It is fully absorbed in material enjoyment. Have experience of this? Yes. Oh, Gopinath, I have accepted defeat. I don't know if we will be able to offer this with any sincerity, but we should try. All of my endeavors have been baffled. All my concoctions defeated, that's what I was saying. Now you are my only hope. Oh, Gopinath, how will I achieve my goal of life? My senses are very powerful, and my mind is completely controlled by them, by my senses. Nervous? Someone can flick it off for her? Yeah, she's a little nervous about spiders. So. Huh? It's a bee? Okay. Mind, very powerful. Isn't it? Now everyone will go run over and do research. Manodharma. Oh, Gopinath, how will I achieve my goal of life? My senses are very powerful, and my mind is completely controlled by them. Isn't it? My mind is completely controlled by my senses. As soon as you shall smell pizza downstairs, immediately you cannot hear the class. The mind will immediately go to the pizza, isn't it? There was Sunday feast time, class is going on. As soon as they see the cookies have arrived, the pizza has arrived, the cakes have arrived, everyone's mind is chasing. So he said, my mind is controlled by my senses. My mind does not give up its attachment for material enjoyment. Oh Gopinath, please sit within my heart and control my mind by diverting it toward you. He's praying to the Supreme Lord. You control my mind and divert it toward you. If you do so, I will be saved from a terrible danger. Oh Gopinath, I am without a master. You are the master of the senses. Therefore, kindly control my senses and deliver me from this formidable material existence. This is the last prayer. Oh Gopinath, there's a knot in my throat. False ego. Please take a sword in the form of compassion and cut this knot of entanglement. In this way, please make Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur your servant. That's a very nice prayer. So we shall offer these prayers to the Supreme Lord. Even if in the beginning it is fake, we should offer these prayers because the nature of the material world is that it will help to inspire more and more feeling. That's the nature of this material existence. That in the beginning we don't have any sincerity. We're very nicely having so many material shelters. How can I chant with any sincerity? Queen Kunti has told this point also. Nareva arati abidatum vai. That even if I'm chanting the holy name of Krishna, I cannot do so with feeling. Why? Because I have so many material shelters. My beauty, my education, my wealth. So I cannot offer with any feeling, but the nature of the material world is that all these things are crushed in due time. All of these things are crushed. Then you will be knowing these prayers. When things shall be crushed, then you offer this prayer to Gopinath. They will be with more sincerity, because now you will be having more realization. Now we may, especially in our youth, where our senses are completely powerful and our mind is totally diluted, we may not be able to. It'll be like on the platform of sense gratification to some degree. We should try our best anyway. But then the nature of this material world, or you say the nature of Krishna conscious process. Prabhupada says this verse is the process of Krishna consciousness. This verse means one is patiently tolerating the reactions to his sinful activities. And the purport discusses that if you surrender to Krishna, Krishna says he will deliver you from sinful activities. So how is it that you can be suffering reaction to sinful activities? So the answer is given. It is because it is Krishna himself who is making an arrangement for his devotee by crushing his material existence. Yasyaham nugrenami harishe tadanam shanai. Take everything away, gradually. Crush his material. Then you offer this prayer to Gopinath, and it will be with some sincerity. Then the mind can be controlled by offering prayer to Krishna. Kirtan. So that's my discussion. Anyone wants to add anything? Inquire anything? No? Everything's good? Okay.
Strong than a regular.
Because it's sense gratification.
What is that sense gratification?
I don't want to suffer. Mukti siddhi kami sakaliya shanta. This verse is mentioned by Mahaprabhu. Krishna bhakta nishkama anta eva shanta. That only the devotee, Krishna bhakta nishkama, he has no desire for himself. And therefore he's peaceful. Whereas everyone else, bhukti, mukti, siddhi, kami, the categories are given. Those who are trying to enjoy material sense gratification, those who want liberation, those who want mystical powers, they are all kamis. They have selfish interests. Sakaliya shanta, so they are all not peaceful persons. So for impersonalists who desire liberation, their desire is directly related to their material existence. Therefore, because it's relative to material existence, it's not a spiritual desire. Because it's relative to spiritual existence, right? Why do I want liberation? Because I am suffering in this material world. So that means that desire is linked to their material existence. It's not a spiritual desire. Only desire to serve Krishna because Krishna is spiritual. So desire to serve Krishna is spiritual because Krishna is spiritual. The desire is in relation to something spiritual, a spiritual substance or substratum. Whereas the desire for freedom from suffering is linked to the material existence, therefore it's a material desire, because it's relative to material existence. So because it's a material desire, basically for sense gratification, subtle. It is subtle sense gratification. Also what impersonalists usually desires to become the biggest, right? Because by merging into the Supreme, I become the Supreme. So Prabhupada discusses in Nectar Devotion, it's just the same conception of the materialists. They desire to become the biggest, magistrate, the biggest president, whatever, the big dog in the material world. So then the desire to become Brahman, the all-pervading Supreme Lord, is just an expansion of that same concept, the desire to be the biggest. So in that sense, material desire. Also material desire because I am suffering, I'm not able to enjoy in this material world. Therefore, I want to end my material existence, but I don't desire to serve Krishna. Right? Because I'm so envious of Krishna that I would rather cease to exist than to serve you. Right? That's what he's telling Krishna. Essentially, that's what Mayavada is. It's essentially saying that I would rather not exist than to serve you. I would rather not exist than to serve you. So it's sense gratification. So because the living entity is used to sense gratification, that gives a very strong impetus for any activity. Right? When we are pursuing material desires, that desire for sense enjoyment, it gives a lot of fuel to our pursuit. And same with the Mayavada's desire for liberation is fueled by sense gratification. I don't want to suffer in this material. I like that. It is sense gratification. That is what Prabhupada has taught in 112 Bhagavatam. You can read it if you like. You want some further explanation? Or that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
When you were mentioning how this is really loud. When you were mentioning how sense gratification is like the most addictive drug, I was thinking mental speculation is the most addictive drug. I was thinking we speculate so often that I feel like most of the times, at least, I am not even aware that I'm speculating. It seems like, I'm plan making or I'm thinking about devotees, but actually I'm just speculating. So how do you suggest? It seems like if we take out mental speculation, there'll be this vacuum in the mind, and we don't have taste for Krishna. We can't chant 24 hours a day. What do we fill the mind with?
Nam Kirtan, the vibrations of sadhus, study of shastras, sadanta bali chitte nakara alas, ihaha ite krishna lage trududamanas. By studying the shastras, trying to understand the conclusions of the scriptures, the mind will become attached to Krishna. There's so many things to fill the mind with. In the beginning, sadhana bhakti means to force. Say, I have no taste, therefore, the sick patient has no taste for taking the medicine. Who has taste for taking medicine? The medicine is a very bitter thing. No, anyone here enthusiastically take medicine? Jai! No one will enthusiastically because it has very bitter taste. Why does one take the medicine though? Even enthusiastically take the medicine. The mind is not enthusiastic to take the medicine, but the intelligence says this is good for you. So then you end up taking the medicine with enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is based on intelligence. Many times we think that, therefore Prabhupada has defined it in this way in Nectar of Instruction also. We think that enthusiasm has to descend from the spiritual world into our heart before we can do anything. But actually enthusiasm is founded on intelligence. That's what Srila Prabhupada is told in Nectar of Instruction. Just like the medicine example, if you shall have some disease, suppose you catch some disease, but it's a curable disease, but you have to be very rigid about a particular regimen of medicine taking. Then you enthusiastically take, you don't miss even a single day of taking that medicine enthusiastically. Why? Because you have intelligence. You want your disease to go. So enthusiasm is based on intelligence. When we are lacking enthusiasm in Krishna consciousness, it's because our intelligence is polluted by lesser desires and other such factors. So if we are intelligent, then we will force the mind to connect to Krishna's sense objects. Prasadam is a little bit easier, but other such things also, Krishna's sense objects, the deity form, etc. We will force our mind to read the Shastra. We will force our mind to discuss amongst one another Krishna and not Prajalpa. And that way there is some hope. Then higher taste shall come. Taste comes by becoming steady. First one has to become steady. Then one can get taste. Everyone, I don't have any taste, as if taste is going to descend also from the spiritual world. First you become steady, then by steadiness, taste is evolved. That is the sequence mentioned in our Shastras.
You were also mentioning how one of the ways to control the mind from speculating is Kirtan, which is explaining Krishna consciousness to others and amongst ourselves. We've also heard you mention in the past that Prabhupada has said that just by being silent, one can make a lot of advancement. So,
what is that monam? This is one of the purifications of the mind. There are 5 austerities of mind mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Satisfaction, purification of one's existence, simplicity, or freedom from duplicity. That's a hard one. And monam is mentioned also. Monam is one of the austerities of the mind. Monam means silence. Srila Prabhupada is also translated as gravity. So what is that monam? Prabhupada says the devotee practices silence by always keeping his mind on self-realization. That is his silence. He becomes grave or silent by making the mind always to think of self-realization. So even when devotees are discussing Krishna Katha in a serious way, not just whimsically, that is also practice of Mona. Of course, being silent is also very helpful. But because the mind is always speaking, you're not silent. You're silent with the mouth, but internally having a lot of conversations, like a schizophrenic person. So many personalities coming up in the mind. So other things that are helpful is like writing. Writing is another form of kirtan. That also helps us with our speech a lot. And it also, again, it's the same thing. It forces the mind to, when you have to write, it forces the mind to think, how to explain. Generally, it's much harder to write than to speak. Because when you write, you can see how much nonsense you're speaking. When you speak, everything's just coming out, and only you feeling that it is very good. Everyone else is just shaking their head. Poor fellow. Only you are thinking it is very nice. But when you have to write, you can see for yourself, or at least you can see how your mind is moving. It's all nonsensical and all whimsical. So writing is a very good exercise for devotees to also practice. Of course, we should write sincerely. Don't try to write like an acharya. You should write sincerely, according to our realization. Don't imitate Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur if we don't have the realization. But according to our realizations, we should write. And that will help purify the mind. If we imitate Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and, very nicely select words and all these things like that, all dishonest things, then we'll think, just see how I am acharya. Now, I will not show anyone my prayers, because I don't want them to think that I am puffed up. But I'll when I leave the body, they will discover them. And that time everyone will know what a nice Vaishnava he was. We didn't know his glories. Don't mind. So we should write according to our realization. That is appreciated by Krishna. Simplicity. There's another austerity of the mind. Simplicity. Freedom from duplicity. There's another austerity of the mind. Whatever our position, we shall write that, and then Krishna will appreciate. Mahaprabhu will appreciate. So, okay, you want to mention something? 4 minutes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. How do I recognize false ego? I see things happen and they're going on, and all of a sudden I've been doing it and doing it and doing it before I have any kind of recognition. Is there like a way to examine myself each day? Or
my understanding is that, point one, we should take it for granted that probably everything I'm doing is on the false ego platform. Number two, false ego means misconception of self. So the power of misconceptions is that they're not recognizable. Generally, when we're operating with a misconception, we're operating on a full confident platform, isn't it? Someone tells you that the temple's east or west. When the temple is east, someone says the temple is west. So you're so very confident, you're walking to the temple, going what? Going the wrong direction, but very confidently moving the wrong direction. So the nature of misconceptions, false ego, is that it generally there's lack of recognition of it. You don't see it. Someone has to inform us with the torch, or let's say bring the torchlight of knowledge into the picture, and then we can begin to recognize the various how we can begin to recognize how our activities are being catalyzed by our various misconceptions about life. The foundation for false ego is ignorance. So someone needs to shine light on the situation. So generally, like when you get a disease, you cannot diagnose yourself. You have to go to a doctor. So in the same way, hearing from spiritual authorities is a way to recognize our situation. That's my understanding. Of course, as we are more spiritually mature, we may be able to see where I'm not acting properly is coming from but generally, it's so deep that we don't see it. That's just, as Krishna has also told this thing in chapter 15. They don't see it. Anyone else wants to say anything? No? Okay. No, minute and a half.
what does Prabhupada, I mean, it's kind of a simple question, but when he says one should not remain neophyte forever.
Yeah, one should not remain neophyte forever.
So how do we advance?
By humility. That is mentioned in Shashaka. If you shall read it in the 20th chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Anjali, the last chapter, Anjali, is called Shashaka prayers. So I've mentioned this point many times before, that before Mahaprabhu will go to the next verse and recite it, there will be a verse by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami that says his humility increased. And then he will recite the next verse, and then Mahaprabhu will give a purport to that verse, and then it will be a verse that says, and then his humility increased. And then he will recite the next verse of Shishashakam. He will give a purport, and then it will be a verse, his humility increased. And so then that's an answer, by humility. So then, in order to gain that humility more, I just read this in Bhagavatam the other day in chapter 15 of the 7th canto. It was mentioned, Dambam Mahat Upasaya, to conquer pride, which is the antithesis of humility. Then one has to render Mahat Upasaya, he has to render service to great souls. And by that, the mentality can be developed, the humble menial service attitude can be developed by service to great souls. And we should have a broad conception of great souls in our environment. Anyone who's chanting Hare Krishna, in that sense, also is a great soul. And then with that broad conception, we should try to be menial servant of everyone we're living with, everyone who is coming here to serve. Even new persons who are in ignorance, we should have that. In that way, try to evolve the menial conception, humble conception of life. By humility, one gains spiritual strength. Because by humility, you can receive mercy. And just like we mentioned this before, if you want to transfer, if I have another cup, you want to transfer water into the other cup, then one cup has to come down. And I cannot transfer water like this, try to toss it up. One cup has to come down, then you easily transfer the water. So when we take a lower position in relation to the Supreme Lord and the Vaishnavas, then so much mercy can come. And by that mercy we get spiritual strength. We can conquer over all of our anarthas. So by humility, that seems to be a good answer. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.